Let's welcome into Straight Fire a first timer here on the podcast. Now, listen, baseball just started last week, and holy cow, did a massive story take over the entire weekend. And to talk torpedo bats, Sam Blum from The Athletic. Sam, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Jason. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm intrigued by everything that's happened so far with the torpedo bats. Make me aware, because you wrote, I think, the definitive story on them. When did they first emerge on your radar?
I mean, I think like for most people, it was after Saturday's Yankees Brewers game. And, the Yankees have 20 runs, franchise record 9 homers, and it's I think it's an interesting topic of conversation because that wasn't really like the start of these bats. This is dated back to I think really 2022. I think we started seeing them in the big leagues maybe last year. Giancarlo Stanton used them. So this is not like necessarily a completely new revelation, but I think what happened, with that Yankees game and Michael Kay talking about it on the broadcast, it brought it into the public consciousness in a way that maybe we haven't even come close to seeing. And I think for players, I mean, it's not just fans. It's not that's what's most interesting about this story to me is that this is a story that players are kind of learning about in real time too, and it's going to impact the game as we see it day to day. I think, this is something that we might see evolve by Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So that to me is what makes the story really fun.
Yeah, and in your article, which is a great piece on The Athletic, it basically says the Twins, there's a guy who's been using it, Blue Jays players, Rays players. So it's been around, but it didn't pop until the Yankees, the evil empire did it. Do you think it has something to do with the Yankees being involved?
I think, well, listen, I think part of it is the Yankees, the person who invented this I wouldn't say technology because it's not really proprietary and it's not really technology, but the guy who really thought of this came from the Yankees. So
Ooh,
this was an MIT professor. I'm going to totally butcher the pronunciation of his name, so I won't even try. But this was, a former Yankees coach now with the Marlins, who, former MIT physics professor, I believe,
saw
who,
that. Yeah.
who, created this idea. And it's funny to me because it's like I said, this is nothing, there's nothing proprietary about this, right? It's just moving the barrel a little bit down on the bat, which, in theory makes so much sense. Everyone's kind of like, oh yeah, like that works. But this has been allowed forever. So it's funny to me that this is really becoming a thing just like in the late March of 2025 that we're all just learning about it. So yes, I think to some extent the Yankees are going to, draw the eyeballs, draw the attention. I think if this had been the Marlins doing it with this new coach, we wouldn't be talking about it as much. But yeah, I mean, when you do it on a team that has Aaron Judge, who's not even using the bat, I think that it creates more public interest maybe. But this is something we've heard that the Cubs were looking into this like last year as well. So
Mm.
this is not something that's completely out of thin air. And I also want to say I appreciate you crediting the story. This was done by reporters all across our company, really. I mean, talking to players, one of the unique elements of the Athletic having beat writers everywhere. So, it was a cool story, and just I don't want to take all the credit for it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah, yeah,
So Sam,
yeah.
can you tell me how the story happened? Like over the weekend, the Yankees hit a billion homers, and Michael Kay mentions it on the broadcast, the new bats. And at that point, social media starts to, I mean, it kind of swallowed up the Elite Eight over the weekend. And it was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a big, is that when you guys put the wheels in motion? Hey, let's get reporters all over the place to talk about this?
Well, I mean, maybe it's because the Elite Eight was so boring.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. But no, I mean, yeah, I mean that's like the way we operate, really. I mean, it's like, people jump on big stories as they happen, and we have reporters everywhere. So I think that uniquely puts us in a unique position to talk to guys and get kind of real time information from players all across the sport. And I think that's what in a story like this, that's what's so cool. This story is just so interesting to me because it's players learning about it at the same time as reporters, really. And I think in so many situations, like, I talked to multiple players yesterday who said this is the first they were hearing about it. But then you got guys like you said on the Twins who maybe already knew about it. And one of the I was in Chicago yesterday with the White Sox and the Angels, and I talked to Nicky Lopez, who had been with the Cubs in spring training and actually had one of these bats. He goes over to the Angels. None of the Angels players even know about it, so they're all talking to
Mm.
him about it. And I think like that's one of the interesting elements of this whole story is like players are learning about it, and apparently like a lot of them are calling their agents, trying to get these bats,
Ah,
calling their bat guys, trying to at least see what it's all about. I think um, they could be overblown just how helpful these things are.
probably.
It could be, right? I think over time we'll see a sample size that we just don't have right now, and nobody's really calculated right now. But
Uh, yeah.
it will be. It will be something we'll learn about as the days and weeks to come.
I mean, I don't know if this is comparable to in the NBA, the Warriors and Rockets started just shooting a million three-pointers
Yeah.
like, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago. Just under the, hey, three is worth more than two. It's inefficient to shoot long twos. And then everybody, it's a copycat. Everybody starts copying. Even within baseball with Billy Beane and Moneyball, when they brought that in, I don't know what, early 2000s with the A's, everybody then starts copying. Do you think that the torpedo bats could be on that level of sea change for the league, or it's way too early to tell?
I think it could be, and but
Oh,
my question is like, what's the impact? Because yeah, I mean, like if people can hit more home runs and it could, and people, and offense can be increase significantly from this tech from these bats, 100%. I think that you might see it almost universally. Like that's just my guess, right? Like I don't know, and I think it's still too early, maybe far too early to say that that's what will happen here. But yeah, I mean, like it's interesting, and I think the reason why it's resonating is because everyone knows what a baseball bat looks like, right? Like
yeah.
this is an image that people can kind of, have. You don't have to like baseball, you don't have to like sports even. You just kind of know what that looks like. It's kind of transcends the sport in a lot of ways, but to have it look just like a torpedo, have it look, completely different, I think is a really fascinating concept, and I think it's something that yeah, this could evolve quickly and it could evolve significantly. But again, time will tell just how actual, the numbers, uh, you know, play out. But again, like there have been players who have been using this now for a little while and they've seen some success. The thing that I think is really interesting is how will pitchers adjust?
Mm.
Because pitchers adjust everything. And we talked with one of my colleagues, David O'Brien, talked with Matt Olson yesterday, and Olson, really great, first baseman for the Atlanta Braves, said that he expects maybe pitchers will start throwing outside more, try to get contact off the ends of the bat, which will result in
Mm.
more outs. So you might see pitchers, baseball's all about the adjustments that everyone makes day to day and how you adjust to, the new bat or how you adjust to a shift or whatever it may be. And I think that this is something that, we're not just going to see a barrage of homers because of it. I'm sure that
Right.
the game will even itself out as it always does.
You mentioned the shift, and that was another one, but the league quickly moved to remove the shift
Yeah.
because I guess it was just too much of an advantage and kind of had depressed offense. Do you think that, and again, it's too early, we have a tiny sample size, but if all of a sudden we've got a billion home runs, is the league going to be like, whoa, we need to outlaw these bats? Do you think that's even a consideration or just way too early?
Well, part of it is like the bat measurements are like collectively bargained agreements at this point. So
Oh.
we got 2 more years of this at the very least. I don't know how the league would have and this is me just kind of reading between the lines of like how I think this thing would play out. Like I can't imagine that the league would have even the ability to just unilaterally say these bats are barred,
Mm.
because like when you talk about like the sticky stuff on pitchers' hands, like they just started enforcing that rule, but that was always the rule. Like pitchers could never have that stuff on their hands. It just became something that MLB was enforcing. These are legal bats. They're within the rules. I think I forgot what the exact measurements are, but you know this is within the rules. So I don't think the league even has the ability until the end of the
Mm.
CBA, which is after next season, to make any changes, to collectively bargain any changes. Um, one of the players that was quoted in our story, Jay Cronenworth, who is on, the union subcommittee, said that, seemed to endorse this idea and said it's
Yeah.
worth maybe trying. So, um, for now, like I don't see how. I think we're gonna have a runway to see if this works. And at some point, if the offense explodes to the point where it's no longer competitive and the game is significantly changed, yeah, maybe there is
Mm.
an adjustment the league will opt to try and make. But I think for now, they're just as intrigued as everyone else.
Yeah, but baseball's a sport where they really cherish the old ways and the old school and like the 27 Yankees. People talk more history with baseball than anything. Have you gotten any pushback after your story from the purists, the 50 and up crowd who are like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. Are you seeing any pushback at all? Because change,
Well,
people are very resistant to it.
Well, if you in the story, like we quoted Ron Washington,
Yes.
Angels manager, and he's an old school baseball guy, and he's like he played baseball quite a while ago,
Mhm.
obviously. He's I think 73 now, but yeah, I mean that was fascinating to me that he was just like I figured out how to manage to navigate like jams, like if I didn't have to change the barrel on my bat, right? Like yeah, maybe there's something to that, but I mean, for me, like I was against, like banning the shift. Like I always think that hitters and pitchers in the game needs to adjust to what works within the rules as opposed to just banning things. But I mean, if you're a baseball purist, I would argue that this is a good thing.
Mm.
I mean, this is
Oh.
within the rules. It's working, it's what's always been the case, and people are just making, adaptations to be able to, do their job better. And I think that's exactly what baseball is all about. And so if they were to ban it, that would be for me against the baseball purist mindset, at least.
Interesting. Let me ask you, you have a great quote from Taylor Ward about how he had not heard of these bats until they went viral over the weekend. I do, like I find it a little strange that this has been kind of out there for a couple of years, as the article states, but only now going viral did a lot of people find out about it, including players. Did that surprise you at all?
It did a little bit, just that there seemed to be this big difference between, which teams knew about it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Will Venable had no idea, the White Sox. And he was with the Texas Rangers last year, right? So like it's not like he was with the White Sox, who were obviously like a struggling organization. Um, it seemed to be kind of team to team that was aware of it. And I think maybe part of that is, partnerships with like bat companies, or it could be any number of reasons why certain teams were more aware of it than others. But my understanding is like multiple bat companies kind of have these new bats available. I don't
Mm.
really think that this is something that's like the brainchild of like one company, right? Like I said, this tech, anybody can make these bats. Like it's within the rules. There's nothing that's like patented about it, and so it will become a part of the baseball consciousness, full time, I think, quite soon. But yeah, a little surprising to me that not everyone knew about it.
Yeah.
Usually these things get around, but again, I think the funniest part to me is that like when this guy initially pitched it to the Yankees, a lot of the players were like, "No, like
Yeah.
I don't like this." Like, and I think
Yeah.
people are resistant to change. He's like, "Who's this nerd standing in front of me telling me I need to
Hmm.
like change my bat to like look like some weird torpedo thing?"
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden some smart players like figure out that it works, and then it becomes a thing, and it's like, oh man, the Yankees just hit 9 home runs. So, yeah, I think part of that the reason people haven't heard about it as much is because a lot of players probably wrote it off when they first did hear about it.
Yeah. It almost feels like in life sometimes we're just so used to one thing and the way it is. A baseball bat, you don't think, how can I make this more efficient, right? Everybody's been picking up bats for the last, you're a young guy, but like, I don't know, I've been swinging bats for like 40 years. I never even thought, how can we make this more efficient? It's just, I think it's pretty cool that, and this guy was a kind of a non-baseball guy, right? He was like an MIT physics professor or
Exactly.
something.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So I mean, and Brendan Cuddy had a good story on The Athletic about this guy in particular. I mean, this is, I mean, smart organizations across baseball are innovating in these ways, in my opinion, right? Like, I think that's partly why you see, teams like the Dodgers, the Yankees, like they're not just paying every free agent. Like they're doing smart things behind the scenes, employing smart people that think critically, think big picture, and think long term. And this is the product of smart people being in the game and smart organizations doing the right things. I mean, I think when you look at other organizations like the Rockies, the Pirates, the Angels, like uh, teams that haven't necessarily had success, the White
Mm.
Sox, like Marlins at times. I mean, the Marlins are maybe a unique situation because they obviously have this guy, but
Yeah.
it's you're not seeing necessarily that type of innovation long term. You're not seeing the type of investment across the organization. So I think that this isn't an accident. I think that's what I would say is you have
Mm.
smart people in your organization. They come up with smart ideas, and it might take years, it might take a while, but ultimately, like this is why the game grows.
So I thought I saw a stat that Giancarlo Stanton is one of like the big guys who has had a massive increase in his bat velocity swing.
Hmm.
If we start seeing these numbers for everybody, there's no way that this doesn't become like a total sea change around the league, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Stanton, he may have, he was already kind of the hardest swinging player in baseball.
That's fair. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, like I think, from what we've talked with, from all the people we talked to, like some people say that they think it will increase bat speed. Some people say that it won't. Some people say that it won't increase bat speed, but it might increase exit velocity
Mm,
overall. So overall, I mean, if you're increasing your exit velocity even just a mile and a half on average, that's what 15 extra hits a year. I mean, one of the players like was estimating. So, I think that like any advantage you can get in baseball. I mean, if you know baseball, like you understand it's about getting those 15 extra hits over 162
yeah.
games. It's like any little thing that can make you a tiny bit more effective, that can extend your career one more year, right? Like that's what anybody's looking for. So in my opinion, it'll be interesting to see. And one of the other really fascinating elements to me is you mentioned Stanton. One of the players we talked to said that he didn't think this necessarily was for the big sluggers. Like the
Mm.
sluggers are more prone to hitting balls off the regular part of the barrel. This isn't necessarily something that we'll see those types of hitters do, like an Aaron Judge. Um, But I don't know. Maybe that's right. Maybe that's wrong. But I think that's something to look for. Are we going to see Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, like the big superstars in the game, start to change their bats? Maybe not.
I like how you phrased it, like over the course of a season,
Yeah,
15 extra hits. That's significant.
very
But it's
significant.
almost like gambling, right? Some people think, hey man, I have a tiny edge and I can hit 59% of my bets. And people are like, oh, that's not good. Well, over the long haul, and baseball's a long, what, 162 games? Like that's the longest season of professional sports. Like
59% is not bad.
I mean, significant. I mean, 59% in gambling would be amazing for a
Yeah, yeah.
season, but it's just that small edge. Because I saw a stat. Well, wait a minute. This guy on the Twins went 0 for 4 using that bat. I'm like, guys, that's one game. Like, like, can we track him over the course of a season?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and for Ford, it can mean anything, right? It can mean you hit the ball hard a certain play. Like it's just it doesn't like it's like you said, like it's over the course of the year. That's what baseball is all about. It's just like how do you perform? Any game can give you absolutely no information, but 162 games gives you a lot of information. And so I think these bats I would throw out that Yankees game on Saturday. It doesn't really matter. All
Yeah.
it did was created a conversation for people and showcase, I think, what maybe this could mean for the game. And so we'll see. I mean, I think that's all this is. We'll see. But you know, again, like if players believe in it, you'll see it, and it doesn't
Mhm.
really matter how actually effective it is if it's believed. And if you look at the last quote there from Jazz Chisholm, right? Like he even said, like, I don't even know if this works to some extent. Like in my head it works. And so that for me is why I'm doing it. And
Yeah.
I respect that. I think that's exactly like, kind of what baseball is, right? It's a mental game and it's about those maybe that one extra thing you can do right that can get you an edge.
I'll get you out of here on this. Obviously, you cover the Angels very closely. Mike Trout is a big buzzy name. Could the Angels trade him? I know it's early in the season, long way to go. But any thoughts on Mr. Trout, who has obviously had an amazing career, and it just seems like the chatter's out there that he could be dealt.
I don't think so. I would be really
Okay.
shocked to be honest with you. And there's a lot of reasons, but the main one is his contract isn't very favorable for a trade. I think he's also like needs to prove that I think that he can stay healthy and be effective,
Mm,
which are things that he's not really done over the last 4 years, except for maybe 2022. So it's just it's been a long stretch of like just not being really tradable. He's I think 30, going to turn 34 this year, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really see, he's got 6 years left on his contract. This is the time when you wouldn't be able to really trade somebody, and especially when they're making over $35 million a year. So unless the Angels were to eat a lot of that money, I don't see why they would do that.
yeah,
Or the only other scenario I could really see is, if the team's really, really bad and Trout's like an MVP level good, that there might be some interest and that might be the right time to strike. But even then, I don't know how many teams would want to take on that contract. And I think the best chance he has of ever being traded is maybe the last year, the second to last year of his deal, when he maybe would want to go play, in the Phillies or someplace closer to
yeah.
the East Coast where he's from.
Sam, do you prefer torpedo bats or bowling pin as like a phrase for
I
the
like
bats?
torpedo bats, man. I think
Torpedo,
it
okay.
sounds fun. But bowling pin, I mean, we'll see, man. This thing is all just getting started, so it's gonna be
Oh
fun.
yeah,
It's gonna be
just
fun
the
to see how it all
beginning.
plays out.
All right, Sam Blum, The Athletic, great stuff. Read his story. Thanks a lot, Sam.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.